welcome to Taking the Myth, your topical skeptical discussion show, the last one of 2024. I'm Stephen Knight, and I'm joined by Iram of House Ramzan. Iram, how are you?
All right, Stephen, how are you?
Good. I mean, I wonder if it's worth debriefing our very first live edition of this podcast at the Battle of Ideas in October, Westminster, Church House.
We proper killed it.
Nailed it. Knocked it out of the park. To be fair, we were a little bit concerned because, first of all, I'm not quite sure. I have got no kind of concept of how much interest I pull at these events in terms of who's coming to see me, who's coming to see the guest,
That's why I was your co-panelist.
That's exactly
it.
You
came to see me.
Got you in there to up those numbers, but we were kind of worried as well because we were literally the last event on a Sunday evening of a long weekend.
Basement.
in the basement of the building, just before everyone's due to fly off and have, you know, the after party and drinks and things like that. So I had this horrible, like, waking nightmare leading up to it that it'd just be me, you, and 4 people in the audience. I'd even prepared some jokes just in case.
I was fully prepared to kind of just streak in case, pull up those numbers. I mean, we were shoved in that basement, and it was ridiculously hot in that basement as well.
The entire thing was hot.
Temperature.
I was dying the entire weekend. But the good news was it was absolutely packed. There was a section around the corner of because even though it was a basement room, it was quite sizable. So every seat was taken. There was a section around the corner which you couldn't really see because it was right around the corner. They had to put a screen up so those people could see, and then there were people standing at the back as well. So that was a huge relief, wasn't it?
Standing room only. I mean, I didn't even have to take my clothes off. So it just goes to show you. And I actually met our one fan that we have. Which was on Saturday evening. It was in the drinks reception. I have to say I can't remember his name though. That's really bad. But if you are listening, which he definitely will be, it was good to meet up. And to discuss some of the things that we've talked about on this podcast. So it's always nice to meet an actual listener, the one listener we have.
This is the thing about the real world. So, like, you look at social media and it's all conflict and arguing and screaming and shouting. When you're in a room full of people are far more respectful to an extent. Everybody that came up and approached me came up to say something nice and was friendly. So that's always good. I mean, one of the panels I was on, and I don't know if a video will make it online. I think there was some sort of technical issue.
How convenient.
The audio's there, but some trans activist made a fuss there and had to be escorted out by security, and they were waiting outside the building and accosting people on the way out and all sorts of stuff. So it wasn't without its controversy, but our panel, not a hitch as far as you were well prepared, professional, funny, and I think you were you had a bit of trepidation, didn't you, was this your kind of first on stage live audience event type thing?
I think it might have been. I think I made like 1,000 pages worth of comments. I didn't even use half of them.
You were annoyingly good. You were annoyingly good. If that was your first effort, it pissed me off. To be fair, like I expected.
You're just hoping I would bomb.
Yeah, just to throw. You made me look bad. That's the issue I have. No, it was really good. I mean, like I say, you had pages of notes. We were prepared. I was relaxed. I kind of didn't. It's easier for me when you're the host, when you're kind of the conductor of the orchestra rather than somebody who's the target of the audience questions. But yeah, I mean, how did you feel it went?
Really good. I mean, like I said, I had 1,000 pages of notes, didn't even use them, because at the end of the day, when people start talking and you have the discussion, it just prompts a wider debate, and then you get questions from that. So it just felt like a normal conversation, to be honest with you. And the audience was really, really good. They asked really respectful questions, and we were quite strict about that. I was like, if anyone makes a comment instead of question, I'm just going to go and rugby tackle them.
Yeah, we did threaten a few people, didn't we? And we may have contravened a few hate crime public order offences.
Non-hate crime incidents.
But that talk in full, the video version, is on my YouTube channel. I'll put it in the show notes, but it's youtube.com/G spellchecker. The title of which is the Night Tube Trans Ideology What Next. So we had Rosie Kay, Rosie Duffield, two great guests, and me and Iram were on hosting duties, and I think it was a really good conversation, and like you say, the audience asked some brilliant questions towards the end as well. So watch that. We
didn't have to do that much, to be honest, because the two Rosies were very, very knowledgeable about their subject, and and talking about their experiences and what they had been through. It was just, in that instance, you just let people talk and share what they've been going through. That, at the end of the day, that's what people are there for. They're not there to hear you mouthing off and just interjecting with whatever you want, Stephen. So it was a very good discussion, and I think I think what made it even better was just the audience participation as well. They were just very, very respectful. There's no heckling, no booing or anything. It was just a civilized conversation, really.
It's funny. And I think just before we were about to start recording, because we were wearing these like garish lanyards around our neck, and I remember you saying, I'm just going to take my lanyard off, and I thought, that's a good idea. And as I took mine off, it upturned the collar on my blazer, and I didn't notice. So there's all these professional photographs that we've had of the event, and there's all this like 4K high definition video footage, and it looks like I made some bizarre stylistic choice where I've upturned the collar on my blazer.
Oh no!
And I look like a dick, more so than usual. So lesson learned there. Anyway, so we've got loads of topics to choose from. So much has happened. We've had a presidential election win for Donald Trump since we last spoke. I think people can just go and listen to everything we've said about that last time. Not a lot's changed. Do we start trying to unpack what's just happened in Germany? Maybe it's the annual Christmas market massacre time
Where
again,
do we
isn't it?
start? There's just
it's a strange one.
All I'm going to say about Trump is, I want to keep it very brief, but all I'm going to say is that I think when he was at that rally and he got shot, I think was it in July, and I thought, that fist pump, waving his fist in the air, I think that's when I thought to myself, yeah, he's probably won this election now. I know everyone kept saying, it's going to be close, too close to tell. And I thought, is it really though? Anyone who was saying that I thought was just maybe deluded. And it just reminded me of the 2016 election.
You mean the stolen one? Oh, no, that wasn't stolen.
No, that was the one after.
That was the one. No, I'm sorry, yeah. I get confused about this because if Trump wins, it's a fair, genuine election. If Trump loses, that's how you know it's been stolen. I think those are the rules.
Exactly. Right. I think back then I could understand why people underestimated him because, let's face it, he's not a politician and, nothing like this had been done before. So I could understand why people were reluctant to believe that he could win. But this time around, it was just obvious the Democrats were doing awful. Joe Biden, it just looked like a doddery old fool. And Kamala was just an awful candidate. No wonder didn't let her speak much. She just did nothing to help her cause. She went on that one podcast. What was it? Call Her Daddy, whatever. And apart from that, I just saw no reason to vote for her. So not a surprise that he won. And obviously the polls got it wrong once again.
Fucking Polish.
It is. It is them damn polls. So that's all I want to say on Trump.
Yeah, and I think I just want to say, same as last time. I'm already seeing this whole response from the mainstream left of just pointing at every Trump voter and saying racist, Nazi, fascist. The usual labels. A lot of privileged Americans screaming about living under fascism right now, which always gives me a tickle. Little chuckle. These privileged Americans are one of the freest countries on planet Earth, pretending that they live under fascism because the orange man won. However, I don't think that takes the cult of MAGA off the hook. They are some of the most obnoxious, conspiratorial people to operate in the political space. Now, I'm not saying this is Trump voters generally or all. I'm saying the opposite, in fact. But the cult of MAGA is a real thing, and I do think these people are deeply misinformed and just willing to latch onto any conspiracy or meme or cause just so long as it appears to be either punching at the left or mainstream media, quote-unquote mainstream media, and things like that. I do think that goes too far, and it's going to be interesting to see now how that clown car survives. If you look at the people Donald Trump surrounded himself with, I mean, notoriously falls out with people who were once close and considered his best friends and aides and allies and things like that. Seems to have no issue with throwing people under the bus. So I'm really interested to see how this dynamic between him and Elon Musk plays out long term. Two big personalities, two opinionated people. I'm just wondering, once the honeymoon period's over, whether Elon Musk will survive this administration unscathed. I don't know what your thoughts are on the whole Musk-Trump alliance and Musk's interference, or shall I say involvement in global politics, in a sense.
Musk is just an oddball. I mean, I've heard that they're already having some disagreements about the size of, the state. So, maybe the honeymoon already is over. I don't know. Yeah.
The issue is, though, I mean, it's good being the opposition because you can just lay into the power of the government. So when, the Republicans were trying to get back in power and the Democrats were in charge, you could just point at the Democrats and say, what a fucking shambles, this absolute progressive woke mess of a political party. Look what it's done to the country. Look at all this. It's so easy to be the opposition and fight that way. Now they're in power. They have to deliver. They have to bring about the changes they've promised, and they have to do it coherently. And that's largely going to depend on them all working together and appointing people who are knowledgeable, experienced and reliable, of which a lot of the cranks now put into positions of enormous power do not have the necessary skill set, mentality or worldview, in my opinion, to do what they need to do. So I'm going to watch. I've got a feeling this is going to be a car crash. So we will see. We will see. I'm happy to be wrong because, God bless America. I do love my American cousins, but I don't think this is going to end well. All right. Do we take a look at the unfolding situation in Germany? Because, I mean, the news broke a couple of days ago. Basically, a 50-year-old suspect has been arrested after a car was driven into a crowded market of people in Germany, a Christmas market. 5 people are confirmed killed, over 200 injured in what's been described as a deliberate car ramming. I've seen the video footage of it. The speed that he rammed into them people is pretty extraordinary. And I mean, first of all, the details that broke originally identified him as somebody originally from Saudi Arabia. He's rammed a Christmas market with his car, and explosives were found in the vehicle, reportedly. Now, to me, straight away, you think, oh, well, that's a jihadist Islamist attack. And you would have thought 99% of the time something like that happens. I mean, that only seems to happen from an Islamist jihadist tactic point of view, doesn't it? And some more details have come out, which has just made it seem he's possibly an anti-Muslim, far-right, anti-immigrant activist.
I mean, yeah. So I mean, this is the last Friday before Christmas. You can imagine, all these families out wanting to have a really nice time, spending it with their loved one, just enjoying themselves, and then something that was probably out their worst nightmares happens to them. It's just awful. And so we find out it's a 50-year-old Saudi-born psychiatrist, And then it turns out he called himself the most aggressive critic of Islam in history. He'd arrived in Germany in 2006, was granted asylum a decade later. I mean, people are still saying we still don't know for sure what had motivated the man. By the time we put this podcast out, we'll probably know his entire life story and everything. So such is the pace of news now. But so many things are coming out about him. It's the Saudi government and the authorities saying that they were warning about this individual. I don't know about you, but I've been seeing some very interesting discussions online, and there are people that I know who personally had some interactions with this guy. Same. Which is weird. You know, that he was on forums, you know, there was something very weird about him, that he was very aggressive towards women. And now a lot of, I don't know, maybe people are in denial. They're saying that he wasn't really a real ex-Muslim, that he was really an Islamist pretending. He was doing taqiyya. Oh, that word again, I swear to God, if I heard the word taqiyya one more time, I'm gonna absolutely scream. Like more non-Muslims know about taqiyya than actual Muslims.
Even ex-Muslims tell me that even when they were proper in the trenches and proper conservative Muslims, they had never heard of taqiyya until they became an ex-Muslim and then heard it from kind of right-leaning critics of Islam. It's like they're one thing they know, so then apply it to everything. It is weird, isn't it, that, you know, if he is some sort of far-right anti-immigrant activist or anti-Muslim or anti-Islam, he's targeted a Christmas market in Germany.
I'm guessing just because of the numbers. And that's what I saw a few people saying. Well, if he's not an Islamist, why did he shout Allahu Akbar and why did he attack a market? But I've seen that video several times where, you know, I think he's being confronted by police. I don't hear him shouting Allahu Akbar at all. And I've listened to it several times. I know what it sounds like by now, and must say, don't hear it at all. I don't know if I need to listen to it again and again, but
I've seen that clip.
I don't hear it.
Yeah, I've seen that clip, the same clip you're talking about. Someone's posted a clip showing, like you say, the suspect being apprehended by armed forces in Germany. And the poster of the video claims you can hear the suspect shouting Allahu Akbar in the video, and you can't. And what he is shouting is muffled. And I don't think he does, but we'll see. I mean, I'm never going to be a popular content producer online, and I don't mind that, because I don't want to be an internet personality. I don't want to be famous for being someone on the internet, right? But the system of internet content creation is based around creating inflammatory and sort of sensationalist narratives. So what we're seeing now is every single person and their dog taking this instance of this horrific attack, of which a 9-year-old boy was killed in it, by the way, and they're just using it as a jumping off point to attack their pet political concerns and projects, or just full on bullshit and conspiracy. And it's doing my head in, because we've got the legacy media, and we will point the finger at them sometimes for playing hide the ball with certain things, or not covering things in the way that we feel, you know, truthful, perhaps. But there are still standards, and there are still, you know, ethical considerations about reporting that the legacy media hold to, that the internet just does not give a fuck about nor understand. So case in point, when this happens, the headline will be something like car driven into Christmas market, and people say, why haven't they said terrorist? Why aren't they describing him as a murderer, etc.? And their viewpoint is that the media is trying to soften this person's crimes. There's an overarching conspiracy or narrative to hide the fact that Muslims want to kill us all, and the mainstream media is complicit in that. That's what they think. And the truth of the matter is, as you know better than anyone, they're just adhering to journalistic, legal, editorial standards of reporting on crimes, especially when the suspect's in custody. It's not for the press to call somebody a murderer or a terrorist. Those are criminal charges. Those are crimes. The only people that get to decide if someone's a terrorist or a murderer are the courts. And if the media starts describing people in that manner before any court proceedings, it's literally legal prejudice. It can constitute contempt of court and can actually hinder any attempts to get justice. So I'm really sick of this online mentality now of just low information people demanding every detail of anything that's currently happening right now. And if they don't get it, it's a conspiracy. Whereas in reality, there are scores of people now working day and night trying to find out what happened here, cleaning up the streets of Germany, speaking to bereaved families, you know what I mean, treating people in hospital. And then this, Joe 4987 with a picture of his dog on Twitter saying, why aren't they telling us the truth? What are they hiding from us? And
there's a wider problem here with society and I think social media has really fueled this as well. That people aren't content with just normal content online anymore. It has to be more extreme. It has to be rage baiting. And there's no room for nuance anymore. You have to take a very binary position on all things, even though we know that real life is just a little bit more complicated. And we saw this with in Southport as well. It was such a horrific case that everyone was so obsessed with finding out the motive and who the attacker was, which obviously are important. But can we not forget that innocent children lost their lives that day? Parents have just witnessed something that is the worst thing that could ever happen to them, losing their child, and we're all arguing online about why the establishment is lying to us, and I think this points out to a wider problem again of this low trust that we have in our politicians, our public officials, media, which is why alternative media is on the rise as well, and so-called legacy media or mainstream media isn't seen as reliable anymore. We're going off on a slight tangent there, but back to this guy, Talib Abdul Mohsen. People keep saying, so why did he target a market if he's not an Islamist? But apparently he posed as a supporter on the far-right Alternative for Germany party, a critic of Olaf Scholz's government, and he once shared a picture of Angela Merkel holding a sign with the words, "I destroyed Europe." So maybe it seems to be a case that he hates what Germany has done to itself, because there was another post on Twitter, I think has been removed since, but he said, I seriously expect to die this year. Reason, I will bring justice at any cost, and German authorities are impeding all peaceful pathways to justice. If you are a concerned German citizen, you should demand justice now. So it seems to be a case where he probably went down the rabbit hole a little bit, started buying into more conspiracies. And I know people are generally quite dissatisfied with mass migration and how it's changed Europe and the threat of radical Islam. I mean, these are valid discussions to be had, but there seem to be no solutions for that. And I'm slightly, I don't know about you, but I'm slightly disappointed at some of the response that I've seen from ex-Muslims online. A lot of them were very keen to distance themselves from him. And you know how whenever a Muslim commits a terrorist atrocity, a lot of them will come out and say, well, he wasn't a real Muslim, he wasn't practicing, he wasn't a real believer, because he did X, Y, and Z and so forth, stop calling them Muslim. And then, I saw a bit of that. Well, he wasn't a real ex-Muslim, he wasn't actually an ex-Muslim at all, he was just faking it the whole time, as though they couldn't quite believe the fact that somebody who doesn't believe in Islam anymore could commit such an atrocity. And the fact is that anyone can become an extremist, anyone can become radicalized, as is the case here. I mean, I've met most ex-Muslims are like ordinary people. They leave the religion and just want to live their lives on their own terms, and most of them do. But I have met a couple who just, I don't know, it's like it's not enough for them just to hate their religion. A lot of them have started not a lot of them, sorry, but those ones, maybe the ones on the fringes, have started almost hating Muslims as people.
Yeah.
And so, and this, I think this is what happens when you, I suppose, when you stay in your echo chambers, or you go looking for content that only you want to hear. You're only going to listen to certain sources. Maybe you're going to listen to extreme right-wing channels or news outlets because they're telling you what you want to hear. And people have been saying this in the counter-terrorism field. They're saying that the internet has been radicalizing people because people are just going down this route. I don't know if you have seen that yourself, but it's I think it's a very dangerous time that we're living in right now.
Yeah, so I completely agree with that. I mean, in terms of the rabbit hole thing, like 15 years ago, maybe a bit less, I was a little bit more glib about, it's not real life, this social media space. When you go out into the real world, it's not what you see. But, unfortunately, it has started spilling out into the real world now. Social media is, for many, a prime source of knowledge, and it's also an instigator in terms of it's enticing people to engage in a way they maybe wouldn't. Someone who posted something on social media today which was interesting, and I forgot the date. He said anyone that sort of left school before the year 2000, did you have any idea of what your teacher's political viewpoints were? And I just thought, no, it wasn't a thing. But now it seems, because everyone's got a sort of platform, it's incumbent on everyone to engage in politics or profess their political opinions. And there's this idea that the more people that engage in politics, the better the world will be. It just seems to have created more division, to my mind.
But
this whole ex-Muslim extremist thing, I mean, I'm not, the ex-Muslims that I'm friendly with and have a sort of relationship, in a sense, that they're kind of liberal Enlightenment principle thinkers. I'm not, but I have seen what you're talking about, this thing where it crosses over to the realms of extremism and just hatred for Muslims. I've seen it go what you would probably consider over to the far right leaning scale of it, to like full on left wing communist ex-Muslims as well. So like you say, absolutely no ideology or individual or worldview is exempt from extremism. You can't say that person's an ex-Muslim, therefore they can't possibly be far right or dangerous. And same about any adherer to any monotheism or even atheism. If you're an atheist, you can't say, well, the dude's an atheist. He's clearly not an extremist. It doesn't work like that. Individuals don't work like that. But I have to caveat that a little bit by saying it's very rich of sort of well-known Muslim commentators and loudmouths using this one terrorist attack by this reported ex-Muslim now, to seemingly tar the entire ex-Muslim movement as one of extremism and danger. I think they really need to reflect on the standard they're hoping to set there.
Also, there's no such thing as ex-Muslim community per se.
No.
I mean, there might have been...
Certainly not in Saudi Arabia.
No. I mean, there might have been, in the beginning, like there have been quite a few ex-Muslim groups set up maybe to help people who've originally left their religion, and, they find camaraderie in people who have found themselves in similar situations. But they're not really a community per se. And also, they're not it's not like they believe in the same thing. Some of them will be very left, some of them will be very right-wing, some of them don't give a crap about politics at all. It's not like a homogenous community. But just on this attacker, so somebody on Twitter, I think this guy follows me, Nick Cano90, he made a very interesting point. He said, this is what happens when one defines themselves by what they're against, not what they're for. When you're just against Islam, you go along with movements just as illiberal. When you stand for liberal values, you can coherently oppose Islam, Netanyahu, and Geert Wilders. And we'll probably get onto this when we're discussing other issues later on. But yeah, maybe the problem is people don't quite know what they stand for, just what they're against.
Yeah, Nick's spot on with that. I know who you mean. I know that.
Is he wrong or is he all right?
No, he's very sensible.
Sorry, Nick.
I think we've interacted many a times on issues, topical issues, also movies as well. Yeah, he seems like he's got his head screwed on right. But that's, again, I mean, it chimes into my advocacy of secular liberal principles as a tool, and I apply them in all directions. That's why Islam's and religion becomes a big focus of mine. That's why the gender cult becomes a big focus of mine, political extremism, because it transgresses them values. I don't define myself as my opposition to those things. I kind of like to highlight how they're getting in the way of things that are valuable and important. I mean, it might be worth, so basically what we're saying is we're far too sensible on this podcast. We're saying now, well, more's going to come out here and we'll find out and we'll get all the ducks in a row when the proper accounting's been done on this attack in Germany. Now, that is a very difficult sentiment to fit into a YouTube thumbnail, isn't it? Whereas, what aren't they telling us? Stealth Islamist attack in Germany. What the German authorities don't want you to know. Shit like that. That's going to get more clicks, isn't it? We're operating in the wrong stadium, I think. But I don't have it in me to do that. I want to know what's true. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of important to me to know what's true.
I think the problem is also, some content creators become captured by their audience.
Yeah, definitely.
That they're more bothered. I mean, obviously you want the audience numbers, you want the hits as well, but because their audience is probably leaning one way or another, that could be really left, it could be really, really right wing, and so they find that in order to pander to them more, they're just going to create content that they want to hear, and they might sound more extreme as they go on. Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right there. I mean, I'm human. I would very much like people to listen and consume my content and this podcast and things like that. But I never check my YouTube analytics. I'm not invested in numbers or growing it or anything like that. And I know I've spoken to people who are YouTubers who look at me like an alien when they say, what's your most popular video? Or how many views did this get? What topics are most popular? And I say, I don't know. And they look at me like I'm lying. And I just don't care. I do know that there are, you can be really cynical about it on YouTube. You can log in and you can look at your stats and you can see, okay, this topic brought me all these views. That topic lost me subscribers. I'm never touching that again. And it might be a really important topic that you care about, that you're invested in. And the idea that you might choose not to not to cover it because it's not popular with your audience, I don't like that. I don't want to be that person, but that's the game you have to play. If you want to be successful on YouTube, you've got to know what brings in the clicks and the eyeballs and the subscriptions and what doesn't, and then focusing on that. I mean, it's smart if that's what you want. If you want to be popular on YouTube, that's what you have to do. I don't want to sell my soul to just cover one topic for the rest of my life that people like. You could just post cat pictures all day if that's what you wanted.
I mean, it's like a race to the bottom now, isn't it?
Yeah.
No one's bothered about being the best at their game and being someone who prides themselves on telling the truth or curating a proper debate. It's just a race to the bottom for clicks and numbers. Yeah. That's it. It's depressing. Maybe
we should start again and just sensationalize everything just to see how well we do.
Right, let's start again. What are they telling you about Germany?
The fucking World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum are conspiring against you.
Bill Gates
with his chemtrails, turning everyone gay.
It would explain so much.
It really would. Right, what are we touching next? Because I don't know about this topic. It'd be interesting to get your perspective. It's a bit icky. And I normally wouldn't cover stuff like this on the podcast. And I'm already blushing just considering it. But because it's ignited so much debate and it really ties into this internet culture of all people want are eyeballs. And have you seen the... I can't even do it. Lilly Phillips, you know who I mean? OnlyFans.
I'm going to talk about my cousin.
Porn star. I maybe would prefer to talk about that, but
you were saying it was icky, so I thought, oh yeah, there we go.
Well, yeah. I mean, we'll get onto that in a minute, because you've been doing some brave work on cousin marriage, some good media appearances and writing. But I just wondered if you've checked in on this Lilly Phillips thing. She's the OnlyFans. What would you say? Porn star? Sex worker is the progressive nomenclature, isn't it?
It is. We can't say prostitute.
We can't say whore. Jezebel, slut, slag, what else?
Trollop.
We can't say any of that, so we won't. But she produces pornographic content via her OnlyFans page. And she's arranged a stunt where she was aiming to sleep with 100 men in a single day, all filmed. I believe the men were paid to attend and invited, and it sparked. And somebody did a documentary about it, which isn't explicit, by the way. The documentary it's not pornographic.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Yeah, sorry. But it sparked a lot of debate about who's to blame here, or what this says about our culture and society and the online world. Now, a lot of the old guard feminists are saying men are disgusting, this is exploitation, it's all the men's fault. A lot of people are pushing back to that, saying she's a grown adult who arranged, orchestrated, filmed and profited from this. She knows what she's doing. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle on this. Have you spent any time thinking about this at all?
I've definitely not watched the videos.
Wait, so there's the videos of there's the pornographic sex videos, and there's the documentary. I've only watched the documentary. It's not my bag, I'll be honest. 100 strangers and one woman. It's not on my list of things. Is it not
extreme enough for you?
Yeah. I don't understand how that appeals to anyone. Least of all the woman, right? But I've not watched the actual act, but I've watched some of the documentary surrounding it.
I mean, I've read a lot about it, and I read Brendan O'Neill describe it as a gross fuckathon, which probably I think is an accurate summary. And a lot of there's a few people I think who have been saying that who have been blaming the women's rights movement for this. They blamed what was the actual phrase now? Is the sexual revolution to blame for Lilly Phillips's gross fuckathon? I mean, what is the relevance here? I don't get it.
There's something to be said. I mean, female choice, female liberation is a must. It's not a debate for me. That should be guaranteed. However, it doesn't mean we can't say that certain things that women do as a result of that aren't potentially, conducive to their well-being. It is I don't know if you've seen recently, they've been kind of trying to body shame that actress, what's she called? Sweeney in Euphoria. Sydney Sweeney, that's what she's called, right? So there was some kind of candid photos taken of her in a bikini, having a break. Some dude in a tree 6 miles away with a telephoto lens, probably. Some gutter paparazzi kind of guy. And they were just kind of body shaming her because she wasn't all done up and on the red carpet. She looked fine to me. I don't get it. So then a few days later, the headline was something like Sydney Sweeney poses topless to own the trolls. And I'm kind of like, the trolls have won here. Why is that? Why is that a response to being body shamed? You getting your clothes off again? I just think that there is a kind of there is a sort of list of things that come under the category of female emancipation that only benefit men, though, and I think sex work possibly falls into this category.
Yeah, I think the vast majority of women do not see prostitution as empowering, and I have come across Ben who seem to think that, oh well, if women make that choice, blah blah blah, but a lot of women don't really. It's not like they just sit down there one day, ask them as a 10-year-old child, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a sex worker. Just on Lilly Phillips, she did make the choice to sleep with 100 men on camera. But I don't think, that doesn't mean she isn't also being exploited by those around her. Several things can be true at the same time. I think, what does it say about our society that we see this young woman engaging in what is quite clearly like gross and disturbing behavior? I think she's struggling mentally.
Yeah.
As well. She's clearly struggling mentally while putting herself in these harmful situations, and a lot of people will just scoff and say, well, she knows what she's doing, she deserves it. And I think what we have to bear in mind is that her mum is her financial manager. I mean, that is... I don't think my mum could even discuss sex with me, never mind choose to be my manager in something like this. So there are people around her and working behind the scenes who I think seem to be cashing in on her naivety and her vulnerability.
How old is this girl?
She's 23, so
hell.
she's... so she's not, she's not exactly a child, but she's not that old either. And, you have people around her who are probably encouraging her to do something like this. I think somebody was saying that her father's friends, men who watched her grow up, subscribe to her OnlyFans, that is proper, to quote that Imam from Australia and New Zealand that's become a meme, brother. And I think she admitted after that she could only remember 5 or 6 of the men, and she disassociated during filming, so she couldn't remember the ordeal. And then she broke down in tears afterwards. I mean, these are clear indicators of a woman who's not okay, and I think she's clearly traumatized by the things she's doing. Yeah, you can say she's an adult, she consented, she did, but it doesn't mean that isn't still being exploited and used at the same time. Like I said, several things can be true at the same time. And I think Helen Lewis wrote a really good piece for The Atlantic on this, where she said that, her sex stunt is the product of a hustle culture in which it's considered better to monetize your objectification than endure it without compensation. If a man has to pay $20 to send you a message calling you a rancid slut who will never find love, who's the real loser? And that's the point, isn't it? That we've all sort of monetized. We've made ourselves into the product. Again, because of social media, people know what will get the clicks, people know what sells online, and they think, well, if we're going to be vulnerable, if we're going to be traumatized, if we're going to be objectified, then it's better to monetize it than get nothing out of it at the end of the day.
As well, it's a strange one, and I don't completely... She's a responsible human being, of course, but obviously, like you say, there's clearly some mental distress going on there. There's something gone wrong. There has to have been something gone wrong in a young girl's life if this is how she's spending her time now. Likewise, the kind of man that would turn up for something like that and participate, that's not the kind of man I want to know or have in my life or want anywhere near anyone I love. I think that's deeply shameful, creepy, and that's on them as well. But I think it's very difficult for some of the feminists now to absolve her of all responsibility. I don't see the men pushing back on this, saying that the men are blameless either, but something's clearly gone wrong in their life if that's the kind of thing they're turning up to. If they're like, I don't get it. I don't even want to dwell on this. You know what? Let's talk about cousin marriage.
Wow.
But just for some reason, slightly ickier at this point. We'll see. Actually, you might turn me around on this. But you've been doing some great work covering this. Obviously, in your column for the Daily Mail, you made a radio appearance on the Times radio station the other week, which I listened to in full. You were great. They did call you Imran at one point, but then backtracked and corrected it. So all's good in the world. But I suppose Maybe you can fill people in on this topic, because people will be kind of wondering what you mean by cousin marriage and how that kind of pertains to sort of like the South Asian diaspora in the UK, and maybe how it can kind of link into religion a little bit as well.
Yeah, so the reason why it's being debated is because Nick Holden MP discussed this in Parliament, and it's because Sweden voted to ban cousin marriage following in the footsteps of Norway, which announced the same intention earlier this year, because it's not currently prohibited, although their marriage between uncles and nephews isn't prohibited apparently either, which sounds a bit icky. I don't know if that's true. That sounds really gross. I hope that's not true. I mean, we're discussing some really icky topics today, aren't we? But anyway, so it was discussed in Parliament, and and then independent MP for Dewsbury, Iqbal Mohammed, stood up and said that he didn't agree with the ban because it would be difficult to enforce. We mustn't stigmatise this issue, and cousin marriage is done, for various reasons, because it's seen as a positive thing, because it helps families bond, blah, 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 and all that crap. And my response was, I understand why it could be difficult to enforce. I agree with that. I mean, our police officers can't solve normal crimes these days, so I don't know how they're going to enforce this, but it's just the way he was talking about this institution as though it's a net positive, that it brings families together. Well, you can be close with your cousins without wanting to marry them,
I've managed.
Most people manage. And my point in this piece was, I've come from a background where it's a very normal thing to do. Thankfully, it's declining because the younger generation, they just have more options now. They don't let their parents arrange their marriages as much anymore. So they think, well, if I can choose my own partner, I can go out, meet them at uni, college, work, online even. Why should I restrict myself to marrying some cousin from my grandparents' village? It's outdated. And it was something that was discussed with me when I was younger as well, and I said no to it. It was, I mean, like I said, because it was just the norm. But in this country, most people think like their non-Muslim British counterparts, that we've grown up around our cousins, we see them as siblings. We wouldn't want to marry them. And the issue with it is obviously there are health risks, as we know. The risk of marrying a first cousin is double that than a couple who aren't related at all. And we've heard of so many cases up and down the country over the years where unfortunately British Pakistani children whose parents were cousins are overrepresented in disability cases. They're costing the NHS a lot of money because of the health issues that they have because their parents are related. And it's not even just the health issues. I think it's about what it means for wider society. It keeps societies more insular. And that's why it happens in a lot of these more tribal countries like India, not India really, but Pakistan and Afghanistan. People just marrying their own tribe or marry their own cousins. And I guess it's no surprise that these are countries where they don't really trust the state at all. There's no deference to the state because they're so insular looking. So that's the kind of point that I was making in my piece. And I said maybe it is time that we banned it. Again, like I said, I don't know how we would enforce it. I would expect our politicians to, fully debate this and come up with some actual solutions. But we have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think you're pretty brave for touching on this as well, because there's a couple of, first of all, to many people, the idea that this exists and is overrepresented in a certain community would just be outright dismissed as a racist conspiracy. And for the longest time it was. Obviously, it was somewhat of a snidely whispered joke years gone by. And now we seem to have more data and case studies. So it's an important issue, and it's one of them taboo subjects that probably brings you nothing but grief from, left-leaning liberals who want to think you're racist, and then from people perhaps that from in the quote-unquote Muslim community who would rather you didn't shine a light on this as well. So I imagine you're probably getting it from both sides at the minute.
Yeah, I've definitely had some issues from, like my own family for this, and they get very defensive about it. And I understand why, because at the end of the day, if you're telling people that what they're doing is icky, it's wrong, it's, it shouldn't be allowed, because it's something that they've done for so long, they would get defensive about it because they don't want to think that what they're doing is wrong, that it's not something they should do anymore. But as I pointed out in my piece as well, it was another way of trapping women in the community as well, like especially if you marry them off to a cousin from abroad. It's just another way of that person just getting a British passport, really. People aren't thinking, oh, is this person compatible with my child? Will they be a loving, stable partner? No, it's just, well, let me get my nephew a British passport. That's it. And I don't know how you can do that to your child, quite frankly. I know of so many girls I went to school with who were just married off like this after they left school, and I saw them years later married, and I think they had several kids, and they just looked, I don't know how else to describe it, but they just looked haggard. They did, and not through any fault of their own, but you could tell they were just, I don't know, it's like they'd almost given up on
Yeah,
life.
I'm not laughing at the way their lives turned out. I don't remember the last time I heard the word haggard. So that's funny. Hashtag haggard. If you've made it this far into the podcast, that's the little reveal that you've stayed with us. I'm wondering, just since you're the expert on a cousin marriage here. Seems weird to say.
Oh, great. That's my title now. God, of all the things I'm known for.
I've not got much to add to that, apart from to keep an eye on your continued output. But it might be worth mentioning another story, if you want to draw a line under cousin marriage. Because it kind of includes a blend of a lot of what we've covered on this show. So it's sort of like press freedom of expression, press regulation, which we were just talking about earlier, and the imposition of gender ideology. And that's a story relating to the Spectator magazine, which I'm sure you're aware. If you're not, I'll fill you in. I wrote about it on my Substack. So the Spectator, a weekly topical news magazine in the UK, widely circulated. I think it's obviously got an American issue now. It's one of Britain's oldest political magazines, probably considered conservative-leaning, I would have thought. But they have been, they've had their wrists slapped a little bit by IPSO. The IPSO is the Independent Press. What is it? It's just escaped me.
So IPSO, Independent Press Standards Organisation.
That's the one, right? So I
think it's voluntary as well.
Yeah. So in terms of what kind of powers they have, that's debatable. But it's just interesting a decision they've come to. So the Spectator magazine, in one of their issues, I think back in May, they were writing about a public conversation held between Nicola Sturgeon and a writer called Juno Dawson. Juno Dawson, a trans-identified male. They're biologically male and claim to be female now. Now, the Spectator, in writing about this, described them, as I quote, as a man that claims to be a woman.
Yeah, so the author was Gareth Roberts.
Roberts.
Yeah, TV script writer.
That, I understand, to a lot of people, that's deeply offensive. But I think that's more about where society is on this issue rather than what's fair and accurate. So for me, to describe somebody, a public figure who is a trans woman, and describe them as a man who claims to be a woman, I think that in almost any other sphere of reporting or any topic would be considered neutral, objective language. But it seems that we are required, or the press is required, to affirm people's identities when reporting on them, which is crazy. So yeah, IPSO has ruled that a clause related to discrimination was violated.
And also inaccurate. So it said the statement itself was inaccurate and that it constitute. Yeah. So first was that the statement was quote unquote inaccurate. So Dawson complained to IPSO on 3 grounds. First, that the statement was inaccurate. Second, that it constituted harassment. And third, that it breached section 12.1 of the Editor's Code, which says that the press must avoid prejudicial or pejorative reference, blah, 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 blah.
I thought they rejected the claims.
Yeah, so, sorry, okay. Yeah, they rejected the first 2.
Yeah. So
because, it was accurate. But they upheld the third. That's the problem.
This is crazy. Surely when you're reporting in journalism, if you're getting investigated for something that you've wrote and it's not deemed to be inaccurate, well, that's fine then, isn't it? I mean, that's everything else is just noise. But they've said, and I quote, this is Spectator's summary of it. They've said, IPSO considered referring to the complainant as a man claiming to be a woman was personally belittling and demeaning towards the complainant in a way that was both pejorative and prejudicial to her gender identity. Now, I don't like the fact that this implies the word man is pejorative, because that's...
Do you know, isn't it these days?
pretty much, but I don't understand why. I understand why they're offended, because they've got this conception of their identity in their head. To them, they're a woman and everyone should affirm it and treat them as such. Why not? They've got it legally recognised is the viewpoint. Whereas back on reality, many of us claim the right not to lie about reality. So I don't intentionally want to be mean to people and upset people and run around shouting man at transgender people in the show. I think that's harassment. I think that's just mean anyway. But we have to be able to, when reporting on things, especially in the press, express ourselves, don't we? I mean, am I gone mad?
Yeah, where do you draw the line? That's the problem. So, I mean, at least they threw out the first 2 complaints, thankfully so. But, saying that it was pejorative and prejudicial, I mean, that's gonna open the can of worms. For all sorts of things. I mean, it's just. I mean, I'm getting a headache just thinking about it.
I mean, it's...
To be honest.
In my piece that I wrote about in my Substack, I referenced, the power of the Streisand effect. I mean, that comes from, Barbra Streisand, famous singer. She tried to use her legal might to get a sort of tabloidy magazine thing, prevent them from publishing pictures of a new house, I believe, something like that. And the fact that she tried to enact legal action generated more attention, which just means everyone saw the pictures of her house. So the idea behind the Streisand effect is once you try and shut something down or in the press, it just generates more attention on that thing. So more people are probably talking about Juno Dawson now. I understand if someone's been defamed, maybe why they'd want to go down the legal route. Hurt feelings, perhaps, is a stretch too far. And it just kind of shows the authoritarian mindset around gender ideology, that they can brook no disagreement. It's not enough for this individual to live as a woman and be celebrated and described as a woman in certain circles. No, everyone must affirm it. All corners must affirm it. And if anyone doesn't affirm it, they must be slapped on the wrist.
In other words, basically, but this ruling, it was accurate, but it hurt her feelings, they, them, whatever. So you shouldn't have said it. And that's just, I mean, I don't know about you, but, we've seen this plenty of times before, haven't we, with some of these transgender activists and people. They just behave like cry bullies. They feel that because they feel like one gender over instead of another, then we have to cater to that delusion. And most people generally, like you pointed out, most of the time don't really care.
No.
If you feel that you're a woman, or you feel like you're a man, or you're trapped in the wrong body, you want to dress a certain way, fine, by all means go and do it. But when you demand other people see you that way, that's when people have a problem. Like, why should we have to lie just so you don't feel personally offended?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big misunderstanding here between individual rights versus demand for privileges.
But what would you also write then? What would Gareth Roberts have written instead of man who claims to be a woman?
Even trans-identified male would have been slapped on the wrist, referring to them as a male. So I'm assuming the only thing that is acceptable is to use female pronouns or refer to them as a transgender woman. So that's making people enter this argument with one hand tied behind their back for people who want to push back against this deeply irrational and harmful ideology. They're being told you actually must enter this argument and debate with your arm tied behind your back. There's certain things you can't say, certain things that are vital to the discussion. It's vital to this discussion, to what extent we can reasonably claim that a man can be a woman. That's right at the centre of this entire debate about gender ideology. And we've been told we're supposed to start, 6 places back from at the start of this race. It makes no sense. And I think more and more people are going to start just rejecting it now. It's a shame because there was a time, and it did exist years ago, where people who want to live as the opposite sex, it's like, you do you. Why do I care? What's that got to do with me? I'll treat you as I find you. I might have even considered using your new pronouns, and I have in the past on occasion. But then all of a sudden it became, and this is mostly the transgender rights activists, and as well, we'd very much like access to female single-sex spaces, please. And perhaps we'd like to compete in women's sports. And we'll probably reorder society, law, language, academic institutions, media around our ideology, and everyone else has to affirm it. I mean, that's when everyone started going, you know what? I don't think I'm going to sign on to this. And that's created the schism, for want of a better word. Schism. Not used that word in a while.
Hashtag as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a 17-year-old female footballer who was suspended for 6 matches last month because she asked a trans opponent, "Are you a man?"
Didn't he have a beard? Didn't he have a fucking beard, this dude? I mean, that...
Was it like your beard? You still got that fucking beard.
I've got some beard news for you, actually. Like, I think 2 days after we did Battle of Ideas, I went on a little narrowboat break, and I just shaved it all off.
Thank fuck for that.
Well, you say that because everyone, more or less everyone in my life, when I grew this beard, was like, "Oh, can you get rid of it? Can you get rid of this beard? I don't like the beard." So I shaved it off, and they were all horrified and demanded that I grew it back immediately. So
did they not like your face?
They don't like my face, apparently. So it's now covered.
Men can do that. Like, they can just grow a beard, and it's. I mean, people. They say that it's very rare that a man can look worse with a beard than without one.
Yeah. Somehow I manage it. But yeah, I mean, as
I was saying, sorry. The female footballer. The thing is, journalists at least have editors to fight their corner for them, but ordinary members of the public don't, as we've seen in this 17-year-old girl who's just been banned for absolutely no reason. And this is a disaster.
Just ask this biological male now competing in the female, is it football team? I can't remember.
Yeah.
And she
just asked the opponent, "Are you a man?
Are you a bloke?" And
hey, hang on, careful what you say. You could get a knock on the door from the police for saying that.
It's fundamental to her safety and rights as a young girl to be able to point at somebody and say, "That's a fucking bloke." I just don't.
No. But it doesn't matter how a young girl feels. What we're more bothered about is whether some fucking bloke dressing as a woman is offended or not.
Yeah.
That's we're all. What is it with men and their egos? It is men who are the problem here right now. I'm sorry, but they are. We're all more bothered about some man's hurt feelings than the safety of a girl.
There are men out there who have never said a single thing about women's safety and women's rights. The second a man claiming to be a woman is in the crosshairs of some controversy, they come straight out defending this woman. But yeah, things are going to change, I think. We'll, and I do think empathy and compassion can be a big part of this. I do feel sorry for a lot of just well-meaning trans people who are getting caught up in this culture war. Have you heard about PinkNews? Would it be think it's worth talking about PinkNews?
Oh yeah, given that we're talking about the gender stuff, PinkNews.
But yeah, PinkNews. Have you been keeping an eye on what's been going down at PinkNews HQ?
So I don't really read PinkNews for various reasons.
You hate the gays.
I'm a TERF. And let's face it, this is such an odious organisation that's just come out against any woman, biological woman who's been standing up for biological women's rights. You know, they're the ones who go around labelling anyone a TERF, right? And then lo and behold, there have been some allegations of sexual misconduct at the company.
Yeah.
A BBC investigation. There was a BBC investigation into claims about their behaviour. So Benjamin Cohen and Anthony James, they released an open letter on the PinkNews website accusing the BBC of misleading the public about their response to the investigation. So I've not seen the documentary. I don't know if you have, but apparently they spoke to 30 former and current workers at PinkNews who claimed that there was a culture of heavy drinking, and that led to instances of inappropriate behaviour from Cohen and James. They initially said they were unable to respond because of an ongoing criminal investigation, blah, blah, blah. And 5 former staff spoke to the BBC and alleged that they saw Dr. James kissing and touching a younger colleague who was described as quote-unquote too drunk to consent. And others said there was a toxic work culture and that they were too scared to speak out because the 2 most senior bosses of the company were married to each other. Over to you, Stephen. What do you make of this?
Fuck PinkNews. Fuck them right in the face. That's what I make of this. That platform has been a cesspit for the longest time. This kind of clickbaity, sensationalist kind of hitch their wagon to any celebrity news story to get clicks. And that was one of the other interesting things about this documentary. I mean, obviously, I kind of have to park all the allegations of sexual impropriety and misconduct, because obviously that should have a full investigation. If the line's been crossed there in terms of criminality, that's for the police to decide. But it does seem quite compelling that so many people have come forward from that organisation and say the 2 people running it are wrong uns. So we'll see how that plays out for sure. But what they have done in this space for the last several years has been unforgivable for me. I mean, they have, like you've just rightly pointed out, have gone in so hard to attack any woman who dared to step up, including, gay, lesbian women who said, you know what, I'd rather not see a penis in my gym changing room, thank you very much. That kind of mentality. They have ran. I mean, I wrote an article on my Substack about this. They if you type J.K. Rowling into their search bar, so not a gay woman, by the way, they've published 758 articles about her. 758, because she must be destroyed because she's gender critical. And they even in this documentary, it was revealed that pressure was put on staff to focus on things that generate revenue and clicks. So obviously sensationalism, attacking prominent public figures, things like that. They needed something that would work well on TikTok or would be shared far and wide. And even staff were saying there were important stories that they wanted to cover and highlight that would fall under their remit of representing LGBT people that were just getting sidelined or ignored because presumably J.K. Rowling had tweeted something gender critical again, and they knew that would bring in the rage clicks and the money and the revenue. So
yeah, I love how in one article about J.K. Rowling, it was to do with how HBO defended her right to express her views.
Yeah.
Amid the creation of the Harry Potter TV series, which obviously is outrageous. And they quoted some, like, so they wrote a paragraph where they said, however, social media users, because obviously they're a reliable source, haven't been so understanding, with one calling HBO's stance incredibly disappointing, while with others accusing Rowling of having an evil, hateful personal view.
Jesus Christ. I interviewed Graham Linehan on my podcast a few years back, and PinkNews, Graham Linehan made some comments about climate change. He said something like, he wasn't sure who to trust anymore on this issue, because he was all into the far left woke mentality, and then he stood on the gender critical landmine and got cancelled by the left. And he's looked at the way our institutions have lied about gender over the years, and he's kind of thinking out loud about how much of the output on climate change can we believe from these same circles. That was the kind of what he said in a roundabout way. And PinkNews ran the story of my interview with him, but essentially implying that he was a climate change denier. But they described me as an anti-trans YouTuber in the article, which is just defamatory. Essentially, what they want you to know is because I have a different worldview than them, I hate trans people. That's what they're saying. That's what they want you to think. That's how they want you to, dismiss me under that premise that this guy's just anti-trans, and that's all they would do, is just accuse people of hate if they had an alternate opinion. It's a cesspit. And what I don't get is now, so they're very much in this woke mindset of allyship, believe accusers of sexual assault, things like that. How can they have people on their books now writing for them, churning out puff pieces about drag queens and all other shit that's happening right now on their website? Well, the two men who run that organisation have been accused by the state broadcaster, no less, of multiple instances of sexual misconduct. How can they now claim the moral high ground on any issue if they're writing for these people while all this is going on? It just seems... And when you mentioned before about this, and I said, we could have seen this coming, it's not in any way related to the fact that these men are gay. It's related to the fact that they have this holier-than-thou gatekeeping attitude that only we have the right opinions, only we know what the moral good is. And whenever somebody behaves like that, you just got to set your watch and wait, because some scandal will come out. It just seems like attack is the best form of defense for these people. I think they see that and understand their own behavior and have to project the opposite at all costs as some sort of smokescreen. So we'll see where it goes, but I think this might be the beginning of the end for PinkNews.
Inshallah. I mean,
Inshallah.
That's the thing, isn't it? They say the revolution eats its own. But it's just, I mean, the amount of articles that they did on J.K. Rowling is just unhinged to the point where I'd say it sounds almost... I mean, it was borderline harassment, really, to be honest with you. And, I would say it might be an indication that they just hate women. They hate it when women stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other reason. A lot of insecure people don't like it when women stand up for themselves and refuse to be bullied. They're cry bullies, as I said. That's how I would describe them, cry bullies. Yeah,
and that attitude towards women was highlighted in the documentary as well. The word misogyny did come up as an accusation a fair few times of the leadership and the culture there, which would surprise nobody who's been paying attention to this platform for the last several years, which is a shame because obviously, a lot of these organisations did a lot of good work supporting gay emancipation and certain causes and rights that weren't fully over the line at their inception, but now they've just turned into trans-obsessed smear monkeys. Shall we see if have we got time for a couple of questions, do you think?
Yeah, so we've had quite a few. Nerth, or True Nerth, is asked two questions. One is, what do you both make of Stephen Fry's recent interview on trigonometry? Is it him finally seeing the light and disowning Stonewall, or is he merely sensing a change in the wind? Do we welcome this change and resist the urge to castigate him for failing to speak up previously? And the other one was, Neil Ferguson has recently announced that he is now a Christian alongside his wife Ayaan Hirsi Ali. He claims to be a believer in Christ, yet his announcement appeared to have more to do with defense of Western civilization and values than any belief in the resurrection. What do you make of this phenomenon? Good questions.
Great questions.
So on Stephen Fry, I briefly watched it. I found a lot of Stephen Fry's. I found a lot of it just to be word salad, to be honest. It's like he was desperately trying not to offend anybody. He was just talking about, there's this one point where he talked about trans issues and said, oh, how can we not have sympathy with a child who might feel they're in the wrong body? And he did mention Dave Chappelle. I mean, I would argue that Dave Chappelle's views are actually a lot more nuanced than people give him credit for. I couldn't really watch the whole interview. I don't know if you've seen it, but I found it boring. I think, maybe he was relevant once upon a time. Don't really know if he has anything valuable to add now. On the Christianity thing, this is very interesting. Do you remember how the early 2000s was a period of the new... the four horses of atheism. What was it? Four horsemen
of the apocalypse, the atheist apocalypse. Yeah,
exactly. And now we're seeing this new wave of theists. And you have podcasters like Joe Rogan and writers like Douglas Murray talking about the values of the Christian faith. Ayaan Hirsi Ali praising the virtues of Judeo-Christian values. I remember when she was in a discussion with Richard Dawkins, and he was just, they were talking about this, and you could tell he was just flabbergasted by her views. It's like he was just confused as to what she actually...
She wasn't making sense.
It just sounded like she wasn't quite sure what she believed. It's almost like she thought... I don't know. I feel like some of these people have just taken a stance where they think, society, there's so much wrong with the world right now. Islam is growing as a religion. Lots of, migrants coming to Europe, changing the demographics, and it's like they feel as though, because secular humanism can't save the West, we have to go back to Christianity. We have to go back to our Christian roots. I almost feel like they're sort of romanticizing Christianity, really, and they're portraying it as this peaceful and cuddly religion. But, let's not forget just how violent it was when it had power.
Yes. Great point.
And I don't know why you can't... I understand that there's so much wrong with the world right now. Maybe people are spiritually bankrupt, but why is the answer to believe in supernatural nonsense? Maybe secularism or atheism has failed. Maybe people by and large find it difficult not to believe in religion, like they need something to believe. And I guess because we've had all this woke nonsense, the culture wars, etc., and they feel like modernity has given them nothing. It's left them with this void. And for some of these prominent commentators, they've decided to start talking about the value of Christianity. I don't know what that's going to solve, but...
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Stephen Fry thing, I've not seen the interview, but I don't know what he's referencing, but back in 2015, he and Graham Norton actually helped a young girl, or contributed to a young girl changing her gender to become a boy. So we're talking about, mutilation, unnecessary surgery, things like that. Then Stephen Fry helped by... I think helping share her fundraiser and actually donating £100 to it as well, which I'm sure at the time he felt he was doing something compassionate and nice for somebody. In reality, he's kind of helping a young girl feed the delusion that they're actually male.
How old was she?
They were 25 in 2015. I don't know how old they were when Stephen Fry and Graham Norton helped. But they've transitioned and they crowdfunded a lot of the money to do that. And Graham Norton and Stephen Fry contributed to the cause. So that's that's a red flag. That's potentially something he should address there. This larger question about Christianity, I'm not entirely sure it's people wanting to engage in magical thinking. Again, there is a lot of that. I think it comes down to a familiar tradition. They feel that it's maybe
seeking comfort in something familiar in dark times. Yeah, I get it.
As I'm getting older, I'm feeling the pull of it a bit more. So, for instance, I've noticed that there's a few local churches soon. They're going to do like Christmas carol singing inside. And I'm kind of thinking, getting in the Christmas... I've never thought or felt the need to do this in my entire life. But now I'm thinking it might be nice to go along, a little event. You know, the community's there, local community. We're going to hear carols sung out loud in a quite lovely setting. 'Cause I quite like the architecture of churches, how they appear inside and things like that. It's not me wanting to go there and pay my respects to the Son of God or think about how Jesus died for our sins or anything like that. It's just I wouldn't mind some bangers being knocked out in a church just before Christmas. And I think it'd be quite nice. And there's something comforting about that tradition in a way that's familiar. And I think a lot of people are feeling that their national identity is being eroded now, whether they attribute that to the rise in woke identity politics, whether they attribute that to the influx of, mass migration and immigration into this country or what. And I'm not saying they're right about this, but I think there is something comforting about, okay, here's a church singing Christmas carols and everyone can be welcomed and kind of bond over this shared tradition, culture, history, etc. Because there doesn't appear to be any other game in town. That's the problem. That's why Christianity wins this debate a lot of the time, is because I'm a secularist, but what do I have to offer that can compete with that? Where's my institution and events that people want to flock to at Christmas for a sense of community, longing and tradition? We just don't have it. So I understand, I think people are using Christianity now as a proxy to push back against what they perceive to be foreign, alien ideologies and people on occasion. And I think Christianity is just the kind of easiest thing to grasp, unfortunately. But I wouldn't mind seeing some Christmas carols myself. It's the first year I've felt that.
Yeah, I can leave or take Christmas carols, to be honest. Sorry.
That's all right. You're allowed now. Essentially,
I'm not going to get cancelled online. I'm going to get people saying,
or lynched,
typical
because
Islamic.
You make a great point, because there are obviously very evangelical, conservative Christian elements, organisations globally, specifically in America, that will capitalise on this resurgence of Christianity. The fuzzy.
Oh, they're already doing it. Yeah. They're already doing it.
And once Christianity has the power and it tips the scale, it will be a nightmare, just as it was before. So it's not the answer to any problem that we currently have, Christianity. It might feel like it is in the meantime, but you're just inviting the lion back in the house for dinner. What else?
That's a good way.
The guy in the chair's asked, what's the best and worst Christmas presents you have ever received? Oh,
I've never had many Christmas presents.
Well, I feel sad now. I have to send you something, Anna.
What's the best and worst? My birthday's really close to Christmas as well.
Happy belated birthday, by the way. That was the other day, wasn't it?
Yeah, thanks. What's the worst present I've ever received?
I think I've got one.
I don't know.
Still scars me, this, as a child. So I was young. This will date me a lot. So we were quite, I would say, poor growing up. Not like, there were people worse off, but we didn't have like family holidays, and I didn't have the latest. Like, all my friends had like the latest game consoles and things like that. I used to get up Christmas morning, open my presents, which I was always grateful for. But then I'd go straight up to my mates up the street who I knew would have the latest computer game console or video games, and we'd play that. So I never had a game console as a kid. But I think my parents knew how much I love game consoles. And one year I opened a present, one of my presents, and it was a Mega Drive cheat book or something like that. Like you can get cheat codes. And I was like, oh my God, I think they may have bought me a Mega Drive. And they hadn't. They just essentially thought, well, Stephen likes video games. He'll like this little book as part of his present. So I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated for that Christmas. I had to smile my way through what other gifts I got. So I can't whinge. I can't woe is me. But that was quite possibly the worst Christmas present I had.
That reminds me of the episode of Mr. Bean. It was a Christmas one, and do you remember he's with a woman, and they walk past a shop display window, and she's pointing at a ring that she likes or something. And he thinks she's pointing to like a board in the window. I think it was a board. Let me just quickly look it up. What was it?
Mr. Bean. This is the hard cutting kind of research we expect on this show. Mr. Bean. Didn't spend much time trying to verify the facts in the Germany terrorist attack, but we need to make sure we get Mr. Bean right.
Right, that's it. I've seen it. So there's a picture in the window of a couple, right? And he thought she was pointing to that picture, and she wasn't. She was obviously pointing to the jewelry. And when they're exchanging presents and unwrapping them, and she opens it, and as you can imagine, she's very disappointed when she opens hers and finds that he didn't get her a nice diamond ring. He just picked up that cheap picture in the window to give to her.
Devastating. Well-meaning, but ultimately a huge fail. Right, there you go. Okay, have we nailed it for 1 week?
I think we have, and we've given everyone the best Christmas. Yeah, talk about best Christmas presents. We've just given everyone the greatest Christmas present this year.
Exactly. Taking the myth. It's what Jesus would have wanted.